Okay, Boker Tov, good morning. I know what some of you are thinking when you saw the title of the class. Correct me if I'm right or wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before. You're thinking, okay, are we going to hear some gesetzte Bombas, some juicy Yiddish insults in this class? I don't know. I don't think so. Not my style. But if you want, as we are discussing Yiddish and its values, because if you want to just get Yiddish words and slogans, open up the internet and you could get plenty of that. While we will maybe discussing some of that, I really want to give it a value context. I want to put it within the context of meaning, of Judaism, of holiness a little bit. So I want to have that discussion, and I want to give thanks to a very dear colleague. Some of you might know him. He's a renowned Hasidic teacher, Rabbi Yossi Paltiel, who is a friend and colleague, as I mentioned, and he gave a short little clip on the value of Yiddish. You can look it up on YouTube and so on. So it sparked my thoughts a little bit and our discussion today. So let's start with a bracha, with a blessing, which is in Hebrew, not in Yiddish. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niya bidvaro. In Yiddish, a bracha is called gebenched, sei gebenched. That's a good phrase to start with, sei gebenched, be blessed. Okay, a little Yiddish. And again, if you have your favorite Yiddish phrase, you could send it here as a comment as we're giving the class, and who knows, I might notice and share or elaborate and so on. We always start with tzedakah, a mitzvah, a special mitzvah to give tzedakah. So whatever comes out of the pocket, we put in, and soll sein zu gesinnt, should be for good health. Okay, so, there's a question that Rabbi Paltiel discusses that someone asks, and I've gotten this question from time to time. And the question that I've gotten is, why do we talk, or especially in Hasidic communities, why do we talk in Yiddish? Why not talk in Hebrew or in Lashon HaKodesh, the holy language, the language that the God has given to us, has given the Torah to us, has given the Bible to us, and especially in Israel, where the language has become what is today known as modern Hebrew. Why don't we adopt that as our sort of first language? Now, truth be told, the Yiddish language is definitely declining, even in Hasidic circles, in strong Hasidic circles, or what we might call, pious Hasidic circles. I listen to the Yiddish, especially even, in as some of you know, and this is maybe a discussion at a different time. There are different Hasidic groups. So in the Chabad world, while the Rabbeim, the spiritual leaders, the Rebbes of Chabad, spoke primarily in Yiddish, and primarily means like almost totally in Yiddish, and most of the teachings are in Yiddish, etc. In Chabad world, because of its association of Chabad centers throughout the world and its a need to communicate with the local population, Yiddish for sure is a declining language. And other than some sort of diehard communities or individuals, actually families, not so much communities, but diehard families who are committed, I want to teach my children Yiddish. Yiddish is basically fading. There's another reason why definitely in Chabad there is a certain general understanding of Yiddish, is because, as I mentioned, the teachings of our Rabbeim, of the holy sages of Chabad, is in Yiddish, and in order to understand it, you need to learn Yiddish, although much of it has been translated into English or other languages. Now, in the more sort of what I would call Hungarian, or what we call Polish Hasidim, those who are from Hungarian origin, Polish and so on, Yiddish, there's a more emphasis in Yiddish. However, the Yiddish has been very much um, mixed in, to use a clean language, with other languages. It is not it's very common to hear someone who talks a real Yiddish, in quotation, will say, okay, sei vorsichtig how you cross the street. So it's perhaps Yiddish, but cross and street is maybe said in a Yiddish word. Or someone, I was listening to a Yiddish song or Yiddish class, and he was talking about how this is usually getan. So there's a lot of English mixed in to the Yiddish of today. So that's sort of the general analysis of Yiddish. And in truth, Yiddish itself, while it's not a German dialect, I don't think that would be a correct statement. I mean, Yiddish goes back many, many hundreds of years when Jews settled in that part of Europe. Yiddish is not a German dialect. Yiddish is really sort of its own language. It's heavily influenced by German, but it's also influenced by other languages. And depending on where you come from, you will, whether it's from, again, Poland, Hungary, Russia, Lithuania, you will have words that are mixed into the Yiddish language, which very much comes from the local language. So you'll have something like potatoes it could be called katoshka, it could be called bulbas, which is all part of Yiddish. In the Russian Yiddish would be called one thing, and in Hungarian Yiddish. So a lot of, especially when it comes to items, I will say that even today in modern Hebrew, if you listen to anybody, especially if they write up Hebrew, there's a lot of words in Hebrew that the difficult words of Hebrew is really because so much English is mixed in, but given a Hebrew pronunciation. I was once teaching in a camp program, and there was a kid from Israel there, and he asked me if I speak Hebrew, and I said, quite well. I'm not perfect. But my mom basically ran away from Hitler, Yimach Shemo, may his name be erased, and grew up in Israel until she got married. And I was definitely exposed to Hebrew. I speak Hebrew and understand it quite well. So he asked me, the student of mine, do I even understand the difficult words of Hebrew? So I said, okay, ask me a difficult word. I'll tell you if I know the translation. So he says, do you know what optimi means? And I realized right away why for him it's a difficult word, because it's not Hebrew. Optimi really is optimistic, but it's made into a Hebrew word. So for him it was difficult because it didn't fit with the sort of grammar rules of the Hebrew language. So that is something that we find in languages in general. Okay, that's sort of a general introduction to what our discussion is over here. So we asked the question, and it was, why speak Yiddish? Why is it important? Now, again, on the lighter side, there are certain expressions that we find specifically in Yiddish, and that's why those who love the language and like to use it. But the real reason for the language that Yiddish had on a more sort of on a deeper level is because throughout our time in exile, we as a people, to distinguish ourselves and to maintain our identity, our culture, our tradition, our holiness, we always established a certain unique language and mode of communication, whether it was English, whether it was Ladino, whether it was Old French, but there was a Jewish, a Yiddish, for lack of better expression, French, and other and languages throughout, Aramaic, which is used in the Talmud, and many times these languages were adapted not only so that the Hamon Am, the people, could understand the teaching, so they used the local language, but it definitely took on its own Jewish flavor, its own Jewish dialect, words, and so on, and it created a certain Havdalah, like we say in the Havdalah, when we finish the Shabbat, we say God who separates from the holy to the mundane. We wanted to maintain our traditions, our holiness, and and uniqueness, and character, and so on. So a language was developed, and therefore the special emphasis and the special endearment of that particular language. And it often also helped. It really did help for people of our nation and so on to communicate across boundaries, which is part of what helped success in business. You know, when one Jew from one country during exile and during persecution and so on, so a Jew from France and a Jew from London would have that special connection because of language and beyond. I say both language and beyond. It developed a certain trust and a certain communication that was needed and necessary, and commerce could commence as was needed at that time. So this is all part of the value of whether it's Yiddish or some of the other languages throughout history. And we see it even today. I could tell you from personal experience that, I used to, not only used to, but more so as a yeshiva boy, I would go to the streets of, with the mitzvah tanks of New York, whether it's Brighton Beach, Manhattan. And again, I could tell today, when you would want to develop a certain camaraderie or a certain identification, identifying one with another, a certain warmth, a certain bond, a certain, way to reach out and to instantly connect. If you would speak Yiddish, there was a certain immediate warmth, openness, that you could then have a further discussion. During times of war, Rabbi Paltiel, as I mentioned before, relates that Rabbi Fuchs, someone that was his teacher and that I also had the honor and merit to know, was in Shanghai during the times of hunger. And and the phrase, "Vos macht a Yid?" How is a Jew doing? Literally could save your life from hunger to getting food because of the care that we had for one another. So this is some of the value of Yiddish. I mean, on a spiritual level also, to make this point, on a spiritual level, we find already that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, it says towards the end of his life in the desert, went ahead and explained the Torah in 70 languages, because symbolically that represented bringing the holiness of Torah into the more mundane. And therefore, there was always this language that was sort of the connection between the holiness of Torah and the mundane, based on where we were in history and the different places that we might have been, whether it's in the Ashkenazic world, in the Sephardic world, and so on. So this is some of the sort of spiritual value of Yiddish. I hope that is clear. If you have questions, if it's not clear to you, please let me know, and we'll try to address it. So I opened up a couple of websites and looked for sort of Yiddish phrases so that we could have a little fun. I could discuss it, and I could tell you whether I agree or disagree with how they are translating this this particular phrase. So over here, I'm opening up a website. I'm not familiar with this website. I just typed in Google 10 best Yiddish phrases, and a website comes up called JewishUnpacked.com. I don't know much about this website. First time I think I'm seeing it. So here they have some various phrases. So the first phrase, I'm not sure if this would be my first phrase, my Yiddish word or phrase. Perhaps this word can be a bit of an indicator of our diaspora and our exile. So the first phrase they have over here is, let's see if you could guess, 1, 2, 3, is oy vey. Oy vey. What does oy vey mean? So oy vey, I'm going to read what he, I don't know if it's a he or she that wrote this article. It just says by Unpacked staff. So I don't know if it's a he or she. So it says over here, oy vey. Oy vey is an expression of dismay or woe. Okay, that's an accurate description. Or it's often abbreviated with just oy. There's a certain Yiddish oy. Or a little bit longer would be Oivei Izmir. Okay? Some of you have heard that expression. Oivei Izmir. The truth is that the word oi, I would say like this, the truth meaning, as I said, Yiddish really has its origins in many languages. The word oi, we definitely already find in Hebrew, in Lashon HaKodesh. We find it in the Talmud. I'm quite certain we already find it in sort of biblical references. It's become a Yiddish expression, but oi in itself, which is a word that is understood as it sounds, is an English word for that. So is really not originally a Yiddish word. So that's that. But I would also share, I remember being at a convention with Alan Dershowitz, was a keynote speaker at one of the Chabad conventions years ago. I don't know, probably 20 years ago. And he was talking, again, it was a Chabad International Convention, and he said, interesting, a nice expression in complimenting Chabad and its work. He said, Chabad took the oi out of Judaism, out of Yiddishkeit, Yiddish word, and they put the into it. So instead of oi, it's a burden, it's a problem, they put excitement. It's a pleasure. There's a loving appreciation of our heritage and so on. So when I see the word oivei, I remember that statement. Okay. A Yiddish cup is the next phrase that I have over here. A Yiddish cup, which means directly translates to a Jewish head. Okay? And is used to refer to a smart person. For my husband is a Yiddish cup. Now, do some of these phrases have a bit of a sort of discriminatory, derogatory term? Perhaps. But I don't think in this case it's meant, there's the reverse, which I don't want to say because I don't want to be discriminatory. But the term a Yiddish cup is meant as a compliment, not necessarily to discriminate against someone else. You are welcome to disagree. You could write a comment, respectfully, of course. Okay, the next phrase, and we're going to go through a couple of phrases. The next phrase that he or she mentions in this article is balabosta. I will say again, balabosta is a Yiddishized word. It's not a Yiddish word, as the word Yiddishized is. My own word. Balabosta is from the word balabos, or balat bait, which is the feminine form, the nekeva. And this is a Yiddish word. It's a Hebrew word turned Yiddish, so to speak, and we know what it means. He says balabas is a term of endearment, which literally means a perfect homemaker. We say someone is a balabasta. You're looking for a wife for your child. You might ask, is she a balabasta? Which means a good caretaker, a good cook, keeps a good home, keeps it clean, is well organized, good organized. So that is somebody who what the word balabasta means. Okay, here is a word that I'm assuming most of you know because it's even made it into the English language, and that is the word kvetch. Why are you such a kvetch? Heard that expression? Okay, kvetch is the Yiddish term to complain or to whine. Mother might say to her children, stop kvetching. Have you ever heard that term? Have you ever been told stop kvetching? Okay, give us a thumbs up. Let's be honest. If you've ever been told that term, stop kvetching. I have been told that term. So there you go. So that's that. Okay. Here's another important word. It's a word that's also, I think, because of its connotation, has really made it into I believe, other languages as well. And that is the word to be a mensch. A mensch. Now, literally, the word mensch means a person. That's the word meant. This is a mensch. A mensch means a person. That's what it literally means. A man. A man. And I would say a mensch and the term that we use today, be a man, are similar. Although mensch is somewhat broader in my sense, in my feel for the word. Be a man means, don't be a wuss, or stand up, take responsibility. A mensch has a slightly broader, deviates a little bit. A mensch means be upstanding, of course, be well behaved, have good manners, a decent person, a good person. That all is part of the term that he's a real mensch. You say someone about it, he's a mensch. I shared once in the past a story, a personal story with being a mensch. I want to say this respectfully because it relates to my mom. And I was out one night. It was during Sukkot, the holiday of Sukkot, and I wanted to go to a spiritual farbrengen. A farbrengen is a Hasidic gathering where you listen to a role model, a Hasidic mentor, words of inspiration, stories, how to improve, how to be. And I was a yeshiva student. I was, especially then, as you're developing, you life is less sort of stagnant. You're really in a growth mode and so on, and you are searching and you're looking. Although that should happen at all times of your life, but it's even more so at that stage. And my mom was upset that I was out late. Yiddish mama. There's another Yiddish expression, a Yiddish mama. I'm sure you all know what that means, right? Thumbs up for a Yiddish mama, famous song by Yossele Rosenblatt, a Yiddish mama, right? So you have a Yiddish mama. She was worried, and she turned to a very dear friend of my father's, who was himself a very deep and special and pious Jew. And she said to him, isn't it true that my son should stay here because he needs to be a mensch, and part of being a mensch is he should stay home and listen to his mother and so on. And he said, yes, it's true, he should be a mensch. And she basically sort of turned to me, you see, you should listen to me because even Rabbi so-and-so is telling you to be a mensch. But then he went on to say, and to talk to my mother in a respectful way but there is what a true mensch is. A true mensch is the search for development of being better and so on. And therefore, he was encouraging her to allow me and to actually be proud of me and to encourage me and so on to go ahead and participate in the farbrengen and so on. So that's what the word mensch triggers in my mind. Okay. Let's go a little further. I'm trying to pick and choose over here of some words that have some meaning. So here I see two derogatory words. One word over here is a klotz. You know what a klotz is? A klotz literally actually means, see, here they don't give all the literal translations. I suppose perhaps they themselves didn't know, whoever's putting this list together. A klotz, he translates as a very clumsy person. But that's not the literal translation. That's correct, but it's not the literal translation. The literal translation of the word klotz is a beam of wood. And a klotz means to say is that you just stand there and nothing. You're just you're no different than the pole in terms of your intelligence and so on. So the word klotz is used as a clumsy person, but that's not the literal meaning. Okay. Here is another very known word. The known word over here is yente. Okay. I don't even have to translate what the word yente is. I'm sure you all know what the word yente is. That's also made it somewhat into the English language. Definitely popularized by the famous Jackie Mason. So you could give us your definition of what a yente means. Here's another word that's not Yiddish, and it's become very popular, that they have in their list of Yiddish, and that is the word chutzpah. When a person has chutzpah, they have extreme self-confidence, boldness, gal, or audacity. It took real chutzpah for her to go straight to the CEO to ask for a job. Now, the word chutzpah is not Yiddish at all. It's a Hebrew word that's made it into the Yiddish language. Chutzpah, again, is a Hebrew word. It's in the Talmud. It's in the Torah. So chutzpah, but it means someone who has audacity, It can mean that someone who's courageous, but really it means someone who has audacity. They have such chutzpah. So that is another word that's really sort of made it into the English language, although it's sometimes a little hard to pronounce chutzpah because the chet is not there in the English language. And finally, they have another word here that is not Yiddish, but it's made it into the Yiddish list, which is meshugana. You know, okay, meshugana. Meshugana is Hebrew again. Meshuga, it's actually mentioned again in the 5 books of Moses. Vayisu meshuga. Meshuga means insane, crazy. Meshugana is a little bit sort of Yiddishized, but really the word itself is a Yiddish word. Okay, next. Let's move on a little quickly over here. The next word is ashmata. Ashmata, don't be ashmata. Ashmata literally means a rag, an old worn out garment, and it could be used in those terms. What you're wearing looks like a shmata, and it also has been used in terms of a person and their character. Don't be a shmata, don't be a nobody, don't be somebody that everybody steps upon. Sei nicht kein shmata. Do not be a shmata. Okay. And here is a phrase that I love, and many of you listening love, and that is Baba and Zayda. Baba, of course, means grandmother. Zayda means grandfather. I don't think it's original Yiddish. It's probably more I'm not sure the origins. It definitely has, I would say it's probably more Russian, Babichka and Zayditchka or something of that nature, that's become Yiddishized. What's its original language? Ich weiß nicht. I do not know. Ich weiß nicht. There you're learning another phrase. Ich weiß nicht. It's good to once in a while say ich weiß nicht. I do not know. But Bubby and Zaidi is a very special term. And I would encourage you, talking about Bubby and Zaidi, who have a special role in grandchildren's life, to be there, talking about Yiddish and maintaining our pride of who we are, setting ourselves apart because of our beautiful heritage and so on. And it's always a balance to set yourself apart, but not be arrogant, to set yourself apart, but yet at the same time to be part and be helpful in society and so on. They're both important. It is important if you are a Bubby or a Zaidi, and if you're blessed with a Bubby or Zaidi, but if you're a Bubby and a Zaidi, to remember that your role is not to forget who you are and to dilute the beautiful heritage that you have seen and the beautiful customs and values and traditions and life that you have seen from your Bubby and Zaidi, but to be a role model to your grandchildren. They're not going to see it elsewhere. There's a very, very special role, an impact that a Bubby and a Zaidi can have that even parents can't have or teachers can't have. So Bubbies and Zaidis out there, we've discussed this in the past, cherish your role. Okay, let me just see if there's 1 or 2 more phrases over here. I'm going to sort of a different site. I want to see if I left something nice out. Let's see over here. Ein minut. Ein minut. Here's another Yiddish phrase. 1 minute. Ein minut. Right? Okay. Let's see what we have. Okay, here we have. Let me see if there's something. Well, is the Yiddish word to daven, and to daven. Daven means to pray. And where that comes from, the word daven, I don't know. I'm sure if you look it up a little bit further on the internet, you could get a origin. There's the word yarmulke, a kippah, yarmulke, which is a Yiddish word. Supposedly, it is explained that the word yarmulke is put together of 2 Aramaic words, another diaspora language of our people, which is the word yorei malko. He fears the king. A yarmulke we wear on a head to remember that there's a king, there's God above us. And from the word yorei, fears, malko, the king, became the word yarmulke, which means a kippah. There is the word mishpacha, which is a lot of times used as a Yiddish word, but mishpacha, of course, is Hebrew, which of course means family. I see another popular word that's used today in a lot of posts, social media posts, and that is the word kvel, to kvel. In Hebrew, we would say to have nachas, which has also been used in Yiddish. Kvel, the translation of it is to experience pride in someone else, typically one's children, right? As my child got straight A's on their report card, so I am kvelling. I have so much pleasure, and nachas, which is more the Hebrew word. Okay, what else do we have here? A couple of curse words. I do not want to say and use that. Okay, I think that's the list for today. Just touching a couple of words. I want to encourage parents, grandparents, that if you know some Yiddish words, whether it doesn't have to be the entire language, I will tell you that I think, and it's been tested, that if you insert whatever Yiddish words you know every so often to your child, to your toddler, or so on, it's going to have an impact. It's a seed. It has its positive influence in the life of your child. So it says, I will conclude with this, the Medrash tells us that when the Jews were in Egypt, one of the merits they had, that they were able to leave Egypt, so one of the things it says is, Shaloshinu et leshonam, they did not change their language, they maintained the language that they learned from their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And while this can have various explanations, including just the way they spoke, there's a certain refined way of speaking rather than foul way of speaking. There's a in Yiddish we call it an edele. Edele means refined, proper way of speaking, which which demonstrates who you are. A household that communicates in a more refined, edel way sets a tone in the home. But the deeper understanding is, I see it when the Medrash tells us, Shaloshinu et leshonam, they did not change their language, that in that merit they left Egypt, was not just saying as a reward punishment statement. It's not just, okay, because they maintained the language of their forefathers, God rewarded them and he took them out of Egypt. I say that it is a direct cause and effect. Because they maintained their language, there was a people to take out. One of the things that made sure that they didn't totally assimilate with the society, Egyptian society, and adopt their decrepit, decadent values, the reason why they were able to go out of Egypt, meaning there was a people, is because they did not change their language. The very maintaining and communicating with that language kept and reminded them of their distinctness and who they are, and therefore they were able to go out of Egypt. So too today, talking to bubbies and zaydis and to parents, if you want that we and our beautiful and meaningful and holy heritage should continue, let's maintain the connection to the language that helps and influences who we are, so that we have a people, so that our grandchildren are Jewish, that our grandchildren maintain the Jewish values, and in such are able to bring both goodness and holiness to ourselves and to the world around us. The contribution that we have given and continue to give in all the areas of life is so valuable and so and be far beyond what could be sort of quantified in just a short discussion over here. Let's maintain that. And one of the ways to do it, amongst many others, is the Loshinu et Leshonam, that they did not change the language. Okay, that's the thought for today. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. You're welcome to give me your feedback. You're welcome, as I've said from the past, you want to give some suggestions for other topics. You're welcome to send me your favorite Yiddish phrases. I'd love to hear them. Maybe it'll be a phrase that is new to me, and we could maybe discuss it. Okay, have a fantastic and blessed week.